checked out reviews. This episode's going to be a little different because I don't have any footage and I recorded most of the audio a long time ago. So I may revisit this one if I get requests to come back to it. Alright. Ooh, okay. Welcome everybody to Checked Out Reviews. It's episode 2, where I, Franco, am going to be reviewing RETURNAL for the PlayStation 5. So the thing with checked out games is that I am checking out games from my local library, and I can only keep them for about a week, and I am trying to beat them and complete as much of them as I can in that time period. And I'm doing this, of course, so that I can promote the library and get more people to use it, because libraries are great and they have some really great resources like video games, and I love video games. And today's video game I'm talking about is a newer one. It came out last year, so it is pretty recent. It is RETURNAL for the PlayStation 5. This is only really the second or third PlayStation exclusive game that I will have played. A lot of games that I've played are things that ported over from the PS4. I've had the PS5 almost since launch, but I haven't had much excuse to use all of its features. So I was really excited to play RETURNAL, even though I'm not really a fan of that first-person shooter genre, which I know that's kind of what RETURNAL is, and it's also kind of a roguelike, which I had no experience with whatsoever. So this was a new kind of game for me, or a different kind of game for me, but the library had it, and I didn't have to buy it, so I decided it was a good game for me to try and access. So before I say too much about how I really felt about RETURNAL, I will say that, again, having it be a different experience, or an experience with a kind of genre game that I wasn't used to, I think really affected my perceptions of the game. I don't want to sound like I'm very negative, but I didn't have as much fun with this game as I did with the previous entry, which was Horizon Forbidden West, which I loved and beat all the way through, or with the game that I'm going to talk about after this one. RETURNAL was okay. It was it's good. Let me just get to my questions. Okay, so just like last time, I have 7 questions. I'm actually going to add an 8th question from now on, but I'll get to that when I get to it. So these are my 8 questions. Did I like it, and why or why not? I did like RETURNAL, kind of. There were a lot of elements of it that I enjoyed, such as the setting and the story. I thought that the mystery was compelling. Without going into a lot of spoilers, just the introductory setup. RETURNAL is a game where you play as Celine, and you're a space ranger of some kind, and you crash on the planet Atropos after hearing some kind of white shadow signal, and then crash landing on the planet of Atropos traps you in a time loop. And so it's the way a lot of people say it's like Groundhog Day meets like Alien. I feel like it's not really, it kind of undermines like Groundhog Day, because there's so much. That movie's like very like lighthearted, and this is very like traumatic. I guess that's where that Alien bit comes in there. But I liked the story elements. I liked the setting. I thought the graphics were great. What I didn't like about it, or what I found really difficult about this game, is that every time you die, you have to reset with nothing. So all you get to keep are the skills and knowledge that you, the player, retains at every respawn. And you respawn at the beginning with your ship, going through the entire crash landing sequence over and over. And I probably have a ton of footage captured of just me crashing because I just I didn't get very far. So I will admit, right away, like the genre was not doing it for me. Again, I'm not a huge fan of shooters, or I have very little experience with them. So this was not easy for me, first of all, and then second of all, like the game's pretty hard. Like we talk about like games like Dark Souls and a lot of roguelikes being kind of challenging or being very difficult. At least in a lot of those games, you get to retain something. You get to keep something. Every time you die in Returnal, you start all the way back at the beginning. There are some like key, like not exactly save points, but points where you can kind of save, and those are helpful. But for someone like me who's just not that good at aiming and shooting, or maybe I needed a bit more incentive to keep going or something. I just couldn't manage to beat that first boss even. And yeah, okay, a lot of people will say, oh, you couldn't beat Frike, so like you don't deserve to play this sort of game. And I find that that's really an interesting point because accessibility in games, we talk about should they be more accessible? Should things have an easy mode, or even just should you, as a player who's not very good, be allowed to see the ending of this piece of media, this piece of art that is crafted and that people took the time to make and put all this work into? I bet there's a lot of people who actually never beat past that first boss, Frank. And that seems kind of not very fair to the developers, in my opinion. But I don't know. We get into an entire discussion about like the accessibility, and maybe we will as these questions go on. But I guess the long and short of it is, I did like it, but also there were things I didn't like about it. Who would I recommend this to is the next question. I would recommend this game to people who like first-person shooters, horror, people who enjoy maybe like bullet hell kind of games, bullet hell style games like Metroid or Mega Man. I also want to point out that I'm not very good at Mega Man, for that matter. Like, I always buy these Mega Man collections, and I'm like, yeah, I love Mega Man, and then I actually sit down and play Mega Man, and I'm like, man, I hate Mega Man. And this was like that for me, and it was unfortunate, I think. But I do recommend it for people who, again, like that horror, like a good challenge, and don't mind replaying the same thing kind of repetitively, down those, shooting the same enemy for like, a while. Third question is, how difficult was it? I thought it was pretty difficult. I did think that there was a limited amount of health and a limited amount of weapon variety and a limited ammunition. Well, maybe not ammunition. You have unlimited ammunition. But like when it comes to dealing like big shots against big enemies, a lot of them were just like, throwing me flailing across the map. Some of these while I ran for cover, and it was pretty tough. Now a lot of people are probably gonna say like, well, it wasn't that tough. Like, you just gotta get good, like with Dark Souls or Bloodborne. And I think the difference again with those sorts of genres is that at least with Bloodborne, that was the first Souls-like game from FromSoft that I played, which I loved, and I would never have played it or I never would have continued to play it if I didn't feel like I was actually, getting better at the game. Like I was learning patterns, I was picking up items, I was increasing my health, my stats with leveling up, which you can do fairly easily in the first levels of those games. Whereas with this, you pretty much never get the opportunity to level up unless you're lucky, and even then, there's always a possibility of a larger enemy will just like throw you into a wall. So there are people who do challenge runs of like Souls games where they never level up, and I've never been one of those people. I understand it. I understand the appeal of like, oh, I'm playing the game with a more challenging aspect to it, and I have things to do. I think I've established that I have work, I've got school, and I have a life that I want to live outside of just like shooting at giant bug enemies and like getting squished by like giant alien enemies. So maybe that's just me. How many hours could I sink into it? I actually didn't sink that many hours into it. I probably played it for less than 10 hours. And again, that's because I just couldn't get past that first boss. Um, why? I think maybe if I had played it more, like maybe I was just not very into it. Like I was just like busier that week, or I just didn't have as much time as I sometimes do. I would have been able to commit more to this game and say like, oh, it's much better than you think it is. But honestly, I made time for Horizon Forbidden West and for the game that I played after this. So the reason I didn't put that many hours in this game is because I didn't really like it that much. Sorry. Do I have similar recommendations? I would say that this game reminded me a bit of Nier Automata in some ways. I think it against that bullet hell kind of like um, up and down, jumping over orbs and like um, getting swarmed by enemies. But I think Nier is such a different game in its um, its storytelling and even ease of access. I don't think I would think that Nier has a very different philosophy and that it's trying to get you to finish that game. It kind of wants you to see everything. And I don't get the sense that the people who made Returnal wanted you necessarily to see the ending, or they wanted a certain kind of gamer to play this game to get the endings. And I did look up spoilers for this game, so I am aware of like what the backstory of Celine is and like what's in the house, the creepy houses that you go and find in the woods, and all these sorts of spoilers. So I think that if this is a game for somebody who's interested in like trauma and working through trauma and dealing with stories about trauma, I could see how that's an interesting angle. But I also find that I had, you know, there aren't a lot of games that tackle that those issues. So I kind of wish it had come at it in other more accessible ways almost. Um, Other games that are similar that I would recommend Control for the PS4 and its DLC, which is like the complete version of Control. It is kind of a shooter in that you duck behind things and like you shoot at enemies with a gun. But you also have other things that you can use to progress in Control, such as upgrades to powers. Enemies drop things, and when you die, you don't end up losing it all. I remember the first boss of Control was a bit of a challenge for me, but I managed to beat it without too much difficulty. And actually, now that we're talking about like accessibility in games, Control is an interesting contrast for Returnal because Control had the ability to turn the difficulty all the way down so that you can't die like at all. Like enemies cannot like they can hurt you and you can like lose health and like be stunned and like have to recharge for a while, but you won't actually have to stop in the middle of a fight or like return to a title screen when you get defeated by a boss. You just get up and you continue to beat the boss. I thought that was really interesting. I hadn't seen a game. That's not that there are no games that have that kind of easy mode, but a lot of them will like shame you for it, or they'll have some kind of like penalty. And Control doesn't have that at all. In fact, you can get all of the trophies even and like do all the achievements and get everything in the game. You can unlock everything completely on easy mode for Control if you want to, and you can turn it on and off no matter like however many times you want, with no problems at all. I thought that was such an interesting thing. And Returnal seems like it's got like completely the opposite philosophy. It's where it's like You're gonna do it and you're gonna like it. Or if you don't like it, then like get out. I also thought Control was kind of similar storyline wise, not story wise, but like genre wise, and that both are dealing with like um, a strong female character who is put into this unfamiliar situation, who then has to overcome challenges and who's dealing with like traumatic losses, kind of. No, yeah, yes, no, kind of. And at the end, I don't really. I feel like again there's these very different philosophies where control is very much about like giving you power and like empowerment, the empowerment of Jesse Faden, but also like it's about empowering the player, the controller, like becoming increasingly tied to this not community but like to this setting um, where others rely on you and you take a position of responsibility, not in reality, but like in the game. Whereas Returnal is so isolating, and I think the isolation is the point where like you're alone and you fight through these hordes of like enemies, and you continue to be alone, and you beat even bosses, and even beating the bosses makes you more alone. And I think isolation is such an interesting theme in these sorts of games, but I personally don't need to experience it any more than I already do in this sort of society, I think. So I would recommend Control. I think it's a much better game. I guess, long story short. Um, Number 6 question is, did I beat it? Obviously, I didn't. I already said that. So we'll just move on from that. Number 7 question is, did I complete it? No, I definitely didn't. And I probably, it's probably one of those games that I never will have the opportunity to beat or complete. I don't think I have the skill to beat it, and I also don't think I have the will to complete it. And, that's okay. And the 8th question, which I am going to add in here for future reference, would I buy it? Because again, I am checking out these games from my local library, and I'm not purchasing them with like money, so I'm not getting like review copies or anything. And so would I purchase it? Like, would I go out and like make the purchase to buy it myself? I wouldn't, because I didn't really like it. But if you like it, I would definitely recommend purchasing it, and I would also recommend supporting the developer, because even though they made their game not very accessible, I do think that they made a very interesting and intricate and really like graphically, texturally not pleasant, really graphically, you know, really graphically sound great game. Like, this, it seems like there's a lot of lore and a lot of detail to look into on the planet of Atropos, and I wish I'd gotten more. I wish I'd had more will to explore it. Anyway, so this has been my review of Returnal for the PlayStation 5. I checked this game out from the Faskin branch of my local library in Laredo, Texas, where it can be checked out by others. If you are watching this series for the first time, please subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos where I review games for this series, which is Checked Out Reviews. I am Franco, and I'll be back next time to review a much more lighthearted game, Animal Crossing, for the Nintendo Switch. See y'all next time.